Thank you for supporting me, liking, commenting, and subscribing. In this session, we're going to get into the shading section, and I'll teach you about shading. Alright, let's move on to the shading section. In this part, I press Shift plus A. At the same time, I add another mesh. For example, let's add a cylinder. Alright, first let's talk about what shading actually is. In the world of CG, shading basically means the same as rendering shadows or creating the appearance of surfaces. When you want to assign a material to an object, you actually use these shadings. Here in the shading section, this part is for your file, and here is the image editor. Well, sometimes in the file sections, you can download a picture or a PNG material, just like what I did. By dragging those images onto the Blender section, they are set as a texture and you save it. Now, do these parts work together? We have a section called Nodes. We have a section here that is the same as the material section. In the node section, it goes to that same node. Here, you can only assign a color or adjust some basic settings unless we work on its full settings. In the node section, we have two main nodes. One is the node shown in green, which we call our shader, and the other is the one shown in purple. That's our material output. Now, you can add as many shaders as you want through the Add menu, or actually by using Shift plus A in the shader section. You can add as many of these as you like. If you pay attention, each one I bring in is also green. In the purple section, it's just like this output, which is our material output. I can bring it in, and as soon as I do, it turns this black, but if I select this one, it goes back to the previous state again. Let me show you. If I delete this one, okay, in the output section, Dream says that only one part can be visible. So you either have to select this one or the other one. Now, I'll delete this one first, and in the viewport section, when we're in shading mode, that's when it shows us. It's a general preview itself. If you want the preview in the viewport shading section to look like the render or to be displayed, please click here and enable this checkbox. Okay, it will display it for you and set it up. Now I'll uncheck it. So why sometimes in the section, actually, we convert the object in viewport shading to world. So we have two sections, object, material, world. Now, for example, I've created a world. If I enable this checkbox, you see this part? I can change its color. Now I'll put it back in its place. I'll set this up. You saw I can bring it back, or I can even press Shift plus A to add one. Here, for example, I can enable the sky texture. Then, if I connect it to this part, you see I'm giving you a texture. Now we'll work with these sections. Don't worry, in the next part I'll explain everything in detail. Okay, now if I uncheck this here, it goes back to its default setting, which is what you see. Alright, in the material section that we have here, and also here in the slot section, it exists. If I add one here, it shows up for me as well. So what happened? Now, if I select this and press New and change its color, well, it didn't change. Why? In the slot section, it says, do you have two materials here? It says if you delete one here, it shows it. Okay? Now I select this one and change the color of this one. Okay, now if I add another plus here, I want to say, well, assign that pink one to that. So I didn't want this green one. I come right here delete this particular item, and right now it's the vibrant green color, even if I truly want to duplicate it. I can use this part to duplicate. Let me tell you something, guys, in your add-on. This part is in the add-on node. Always make sure to enable the colorize node option, unless I've pronounced its name wrong. Always keep this option enabled because it will really help you later when you want to make copies. For example, let me mention something. Let's say I like this material and I want to make a copy of it. Look, whichever one I'm on, if I press Ctrl+T, it copies both the reference sample and the texture for me. I'll explain this to you later. So here I press Ctrl+T. It gives me a reference texture, an image texture mapping, and another texture. So make sure to enable this option. I mentioned this now because I might forget in the next parts, so that's why I said it. Now, let's move on to this section. If I click this delete button, the material will be removed for me, but it still shows up in these sections. These zeros mean that you've actually deleted your link or data link, but here, the preview is still available. These 2s and 3s mean that you have colors. You see? So it's showing them here. Now, if I come here again and select this one, I see that this cube only has one color. There's just one of it. I can add it from here. Now I'll make its color blue as well. All right, first of all, you see this one also turned blue. With this arrow, you can move it around. Okay, I come here, delete this, and set my material to this color. Okay, I press Shift and it copies this. Now if I want to change this, both of them will change. But if I want only this one to change, I come here and deselect this one. Now, I don't just deselect it. In fact, I delete it. Then I click New to add a different color to this one. So now let's move on to the music rendering section. This is a continuation of the tradition. I want to explain about your rendering. Then I'll say, here we have 3 sections in the rendering section: Eevee, Workbench, and Cycles. The Cycles section is in the A section. He, she. In fact, it's the part that real-time shows us in the music circle section. Actually, for example, when I come here so we can see more, it gives me a full render, like a V-Ray render. Certainly, the result of the Cycles render is much stronger than Eevee and shows the quality and work much better. Now, in the Workbench section with Eevee, you'll see that the shading doesn't really differ much. Well, actually, in the Workbench section, if you look very closely, in particular, there's not much significant difference in its visual render from a visual perspective. When I switch to the Workbench section, it even removes the original Viewport Shading preview. What is this useful for? It's useful when you're working on a long animation and want to take a few image renders. Okay, so I go to Render Image, take a render, check my work, and then go back, or even if I want to render an animation. In the render section, we have 2 types of renders. One is render image and the other is render animation, which we have here. From the view menu, it gives me a full render of this section. Now, what difference does this make? If you pay attention, even if I go to the layout section and take a render from the view, you see, it's like it takes a screenshot showing all your features, your render, your camera. It shows these as well, and this same render exists in animation too, and can show them to you. There, it does an actual render and gives you a complete output. Here, it basically takes a screenshot of the work you can do. Section. We've worked with materials up to this point, and I've talked to you about shaders and the viewport In the next session, I'll go into more detail what analysis, I'll explain more about shadings, how to import textures, and together we'll be able to color a texture. So in this session, I explained materials and talked about the node so that you could get familiar with the shading section. Well, if you're new to my channel, please like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon. Guys, please leave me comments. Your comments really help me. It gives me energy, so please like the video. It helps my tutorials reach more people, and thank you so much. Thanks to each and every one of you for your support. Goodbye.